My name is Baranor, Clan Sarek, Serenai Mobile Infantry, 22nd Platoon, Assault Recon. And here I am, sitting in my light mech, cloaked and blending into the terrain, as I watch the start of a large battle between the humans and our greatest rival. We have been at war with the Imbakai for centuries. It degenerated into a stalemate. We would gain ground, then lose ground, then it would all repeat with nothing but death and destruction. An uneasy truce erupted with minor skirmishes fought by either side that we would all pretend never happened in order to prevent a larger conflict. Then came along the humans. Suddenly the Imbakai were losing. I wanted to know why. That's why I was here. It was my job to understand the differences, see it with my own eyes, and watch what happens, while the speakers and listeners worked their diplomatic magic. I watched over the hillside as an Imbakai siege mech casually trundled out of its hangar and tested its laser array on a nearby mountain. Mechs. The replacement for tanks. Heavy armored vehicles and, generally speaking, a replacement for most such vehicles. Humans started just like all of us did. They put wheels on something to bring in bigger guns. When those guns weren't big enough, they used tracks to bring in bigger guns, creating tanks. Then those tanks evolved. Then came drones. Remote control things that were cheap, easy, and expendable, making those tanks too costly to run, making them obsolete. Then it led to a war of drones, and more drones. Then tech came in that disabled those drones. And tanks were made with that drone disabling tech. Then it was wars with special tanks that had their own drones that were immune to that drone tech. Then came the battles where tanks were too heavy. Then came the mechs. Too strong for the drones, too fast for the tanks. Then that tech evolved more, and now we have the modern battlefield. The modern war. Tanks are relegated to a siege role, or mobile artillery platform in most cases, a support or logistics role. Drones are relegated to a scout role because there's too much tech that is used against them. Mechs now dominate the battlefield. How does one define mech exactly? Mechanized vehicle. Oxymoron, you say? Mechs are defined by their role as mechanized infantry, or piloted suits, or defined by the fact they have natural mobility, legs or arms as opposed to wheels and hulls. Tanks and drones are still used, of course, but they are generally last resort or mass assault roles in combat. Cannon fodder, basically. My people, the Serenai, have 3 types of mech, just like the rest of the galaxy. Classed by size, weight, and firepower. Smaller mechs are considered as infantry, medium mechs are considered as light or heavy armor, and heavy mechs are artillery or support class vehicles. It's all very simple, and is mainly based on guns. With humans, that turned out to be considerably more complicated. Not only due to deployed tactics, but the classifications they have, and some of these classes are absurd and insane. I could see on the cloaked scout drone and various cameras I had set up on the ridgeline to capture the human advance. The human mechs were gearing up for an assault too, and by all the gods was the sheer size and variety nothing short of absurd. This was probably the reason. They simply had too much stuff to deal with, so the Imbakai couldn't adapt tactics fast enough. The Imbakai has set up a large mineral extraction facility in the middle of a large extinct volcanic caldera between 3 mountain ranges. Clever positioning, good material quality. Couldn't really ask for a more defensible position. The Imbakai had their signature mech garrison. 20 light mechs, 15 medium-class mechs, and 2 large mechs, 1 heavy and 1 siege. Plus a complement of infantry units, as per usual. The humans had, well, it's hard to classify what they had. I saw 100 or more units. Trying to understand it, I figured maybe 60 tiny mechs, 20 light mechs, 10 medium mechs, and 9 heavy mechs with 1 absolutely appallingly massive mech. Seriously, what was that thing? Attempting to describe it, the tiny mechs were maybe a form of powered combat armor, as best as I can understand. A large array of weapons between them. The light mechs were similar to mine, half-armed with long rifles. The other armed, hilariously enough, with exclusively low-caliber weapons and melee weapons. Insane. The heavy mechs were a mix of 3 distinct types. One mounted on 4 legs, armed with heavy artillery. One type that seemed similar to light mechs, but had a massive amount of guns mounted on its structure. And one that was basically a massively scaled up tracked vehicle that seemed to have an array of missiles and drones. The last mech was 40 stories tall, 6-legged, vicious looking, and seemed similar in construction to something the humans offhandedly described as a wolf spider. It seemed to have one large high caliber turret on its back. I hadn't seen it move. It seemed to have a crew of 5 people. These humans were insane. I would call them stupid because who needs something that big and a crew of 5? But then again, after not facing any losses in combat with the Imbekai, I can't call them anything except enigmatic. Probably explains why I was sent here by the higher-ups. I needed to watch them fight. I needed to understand why the Imbekai were losing. I needed to know how. I was about to get my answer. The first thing I heard cresting the hilltops were those abominations they call gunships. We Serenai have exceptionally good hearing, so I was able to hear that distinct noise a country mile away. Unlike the Imbekai, apparently, who only heard their presence when it was too late. The helicopters, strange mechanical abominations with oversized propulsion and overdone weaponry. The helicopter things crested the smallest of the mountaintops and aimed themselves at the siege mech. The roar of the machines echoed through the valley as they expertly wove through a sudden hail of laser fire. The machines shrugged off the retaliatory assault and roared through with speed unbefitting of such ludicrous machinery. They swooped once, unleashed a barrage of rocket and cannon fire from their absurd weapons, and within seconds the siege mech was completely destroyed. The humans managed to escape the area, but I noticed at least 2 of the helicopters they had were now damaged or smoking, one leaning slightly to the left, as the rest of the group closed around it. The siege mech the Imbekai had was a complete loss. Joint actuators on 3 of its 6 legs were destroyed, 2 more severely damaged, and part of its power core was exposed, due to the armor plating being blown off. It was too dangerous to use now, so the technicians, as per standard procedure, shut it down and disabled its fuel cells, so if it got hit again, it wouldn't detonate. One strike destroyed a machine that years past had caused us untold misery, something we had to work hard to destroy, taken out by one of the strangest machines ever seen. I felt insulted. All our work and development, and this is what finally beat the Imbekai? I watched carefully, and the Imbekai were preparing a retaliatory strike. That's when I saw it. A strange red dot somewhere on an opposing mountain. I couldn't see it as it quickly vanished, but I knew something was there. Then it happened. As the Imbekai were gearing up to strike, a barrage of explosive shells suddenly rained down on the facility, most of which targeted the heavy mechs. I saw it again, a flash of red light somewhere on the mountain. If I turned on various equipments to see what was going on, I would risk exposing my position. I calmed my curiosity for the moment, at least. The artillery shells were hitting with far too much accuracy. The first volley of shells impacted a regiment of anti-aircraft mechs, 2 of which outright exploded due to the damage. 3 more were critically damaged, and one unfortunate bastard got caught outside his mech and ended up being used as its new paint job. I retched at the sight to be certain. Enemy or not, nobody needed that. The barrage ended, and within seconds, a swarm of human mechs suddenly burst into view through the canyon. They moved absurdly fast. The mech's legs had mini wheels. The humans were using both wheeled and mechanized mobility to help with their systems. The legs of their mechs were bent forward slightly. The tip of the feet raised up, and a small ball-shaped monowheel allowed them to glide across the rocky canyon floor. They moved too fast for the Imbekai to handle, and what mechs were left standing fought back with little result. Human mech weapons were also kinetic, as opposed to the lasers we had been fighting them with for centuries. This was an outer-reach colony, and it didn't have the new stuff. Those poor men didn't last long when hit with that firepower. The Imbekai's heavy mech fought back hard compared to his brethren. The humans moved fast, but apparently not fast enough, as he took out 3 human mechs in the ensuing fight. His mech was mildly resistant to the kinetic weaponry, but it didn't matter. The humans swarmed, overwhelmed him, keeping him busy. And apparently that distraction was what the humans were doing, as moments later the heavy mech was hit directly in the cockpit with a hideously overpowered railgun slug. The offending mechs, the human heavy mechs, the ones with the huge tracks and 6 legs, had by now entered the fray and finished the fight in one fell swoop. The Imbekai had already closed the blast doors on their storage facility built into the mountain, locking the humans out. It was a common tactic with the Imbekai. The humans referred to their tactics as turtling, or to build massive defensive fortifications and use these to weather the opponent down before striking hard. Humans apparently used something called rush tactics, which was apparently swarming with overwhelming firepower as quickly as possible in order to overwhelm those defenses. The humans began to systematically destroy the local area, the infrastructure, and everything they could find that they could shoot at. They destroyed it. The refinery, gone. The mine access point, destroyed. Then, the humans did the Imbekai a massive insult. The humans brought in a service mech unit and welded the blast door shut. They trapped the Imbekai commissar and their service personnel inside the storage depot. Imbekai are a highly paranoid species, and they aren't intelligent enough to understand the concept of a backdoor entrance. As a consequence, unlike the humans, the Imbekai would die in that depot. The humans grabbed whatever they didn't destroy, likely to reverse engineer it, just like we would do, and salvage what they couldn't. I considered the risks. Perhaps if we just minded our own business and left the humans alone, they would too. I considered the challenges of having to deal with these crazy creatures. Logistically, we would lose. With so many different pieces of equipment and their varied tactics, fighting them would be abnormally expensive in both resources and manpower. Every garrison across the galaxy would need to be doubled just to dissuade them from engaging. The technology we would require would stretch our resources a bit too far just to counter their varying tactics. Strategy alone leaves us at a severe disadvantage, due to the fact we've been spending the last 3 centuries countering the Imbekai and their idiocy. We don't have anything to counter them within a reasonable time frame. We will lose half our territory before the first time we would win against them, if that. Then there's the matter of numbers. It's no secret that humans outnumber us 10 to 1. Even with a tactical advantage, that number is unreasonable. We are at every disadvantage here, and in peacetime we might have the chance to fix that disadvantage. But after 300 years of warfare against the same enemy, we wouldn't stand a chance. We are the equivalent of a wall built to fight the ocean. Now we face a landslide from the mountain and cannot fight back. The mechs all filtered out of the area, and the drone of those abominations they call flying machines quickly faded away. I saw everything I needed to. Now my bosses had to know. If we just left them alone, the Imbekai would eventually surrender. We would get the time we need to meet them on open ground without catastrophic losses. I had to leave. I tried to stand up. Proximity alert sounded. Before I could do anything, my radar pinged with 6 contacts, one of which was directly behind me. I heard the mechanical click of a rifle. How did they get so close before I noticed them? Was I just so distracted, or were they just so sneaky? Who are you supposed to be? You aren't one of them imbis. Mech is too sleek, I heard a voice say. I looked around. I had no escape. I had to follow the procedure my commander told me to follow before I came here. I am Serenite Imperium, Mobile Infantry Recon Unit. I was sent here to see how you beat the Imbekai, I replied sternly. He seemed surprised by that statement for some reason. Huh, you're very forthcoming with that info. I am only following orders. If you are caught by the humans, tell them the truth. They seem to like it when people are honest with them. So, there you go, I replied, still feeling the foreboding dread of having an oversized gun aimed at my head. Huh, smart guy. Serenai. Those dudes on the southern fringes, huh? What's your beef with the Imbis then? We have been fighting those idiots at a stalemate for over 3 centuries. Then you show up, and beat them into the dust with basically no effort. I was sent here to find out why. I did. I was packing up my gear when you aimed a gun at my head, I said, strangely calm. And what conclusions did you come to, exactly? That voice asked again, the tone of voice dripping with more malice than I knew existed. "We would lose half our territory before we could fight back. It would end in another centuries-long stalemate, so my best guess is to just leave you alone and let you do your thing. The Imbekai are idiots, but they aren't suicidal idiots. They won't last much longer. When I get back, I'm going to recommend a live and let live policy." "Is that the correct phrase? Live and let live?" I said. "Smart choice." "But before I go, may I ask one question?" I asked, as politely as I could. "Go on." "Why did you weld their depot shut? Why did you trap them in there?" I asked. "We are merely showing them the same courtesy as they showed us. They tortured kids, burned cities, and other stuff like that. They want wealth, they can keep it. Weld them inside their precious vaults. They want slaves, they can use their own people for the job when the workers die off. It's merely a matter of giving them what they want, just not the way they want." Again, that voice spoke with an unnatural quality of malice. "I see. That's something." An awkward silence followed. "Well, I'm just going to go, I guess. I don't need to see more, or hear more," I said, trying to sound calmer than I was. "Sure. See ya." My proximity alarm suddenly stopped, and I was almost instantly alone. These humans moved abnormally fast, even in mech suits and powered armor. I quickly gathered my equipment and headed back to my ship. Conspicuously untouched, alone and unmoved. I could tell from a tingling in the back of my head I was not alone, and was being watched, but by who I had no idea, nor care to. I clambered inside my ship, put my mech back in its charge slot, and got off-world as fast as I possibly could. I had inadvertently just discovered a new way they could beat us. They can use some kind of stealth tech with their mechs. Prox alerts only went off when I had them right on my back. There was no way we could fight that. I had to tell the commissars.